All right, everybody. You're watching the LitTube channel. I've got a special guest on tonight. Man of many interests and talents, Mr. Phil Hoyle.
Hey.
So for those, so I'm sure our viewers don't really know anything about the two of us as far as like how we met and all that, but I actually met you in college. We both went to Towson. I remember you were like, had some kind of like desk posted up outside the dining hall.
Yes.
Saying like, come over here if you need help with stuff.
Yep. Yep. Was your friend?
It was random as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. My senior year and your freshman. I had Andy with you. Remember that Andy Prismer?
Yeah, I think I remember him.
I think he was with me. Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, we stayed friends for a while, and then even after you had graduated, we stayed in touch. But then there was a period of about 5 years from, I believe, 2015 up to now where we kind of lost contact. I don't know if we want to go in that whole story right now, but essentially you were renting out a room in a friend's place, and I was coming out there to visit you in Silver Spring a couple times over a span of a few months, and well, things kind of fell apart. And
yeah, that's one way of putting it. By the way, I had to change I didn't realize when I put the lighting down that the light went down, so I had to turn the lighting back up.
So anyways, here we are 5 years later. You hit me up out of the blue, and we're doing a video.
Yep, and it's Passover, by the way. Right now. Yep, it just started Passover tonight.
But I think the audience should also have some context, because back when I was visiting you at your house in Silver Spring, we had talked a lot about like the next market crash, the end times, like real doomsday kind of stuff.
That's right.
And I remember specifically, I asked you like when you thought like the economy would crash next. And you pretty much predicted it to a T, because you told me at the time 5 years is what you were thinking. And lo and behold, you hit me up like 5 years later. And
yep. Guess what? The economy crashed, or it's crashing rather. The knife is falling, as the economists say.
And we're living in a global pandemic where we're all like forced to stay at home. I mean, it's just wild, but I wanted to kind of set the stage, because this is going to be a video that's more focusing on the economic aspect of all this. And one of the place I wanted to start was just an overview of where we are in terms of our country's debt, because the U.S. national debt is at $24 trillion right now, which, to put in context, is about $73,000 per citizen and $194,000 per taxpayer. The federal debt to GDP ratio, this is also interesting. In 1980, it was 34.55%. In 2000, 58.45%. And you want to know what it is now?
It's like what, 115?
110.92%.
Okay.
Based off what I saw on the U.S. debt clock.org.
Yep. I haven't checked that in a while, because I know it's like going one direction.
Right. And the other thing is, our interest on debt is now a top 5 budget item for the federal government, and that's sitting at $381 billion. And all this in the context of President Trump just signed a $2 trillion stimulus bill that was passed by Congress. That has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, which, they're basically saying it's to give relief to the people, but really I think it's more of the corporations that are getting the bump with that. But I guess I just want to start off by asking you, how concerned should we be about government debt? And are there factors with the economy that are a bigger issue that we need to be more concerned about?
Good, you read my mind. I would say that government debt in the long term is probably the number one financial and economic thing to be concerned with. But at this moment right now, it is not. It is not the main issue. It will become the main issue, but it is not at the moment the main issue. Now, since this is the first video we're doing, I haven't gone ahead. I've been, I don't know if y'all heard of, not Martin Luther, but Luther Martin, who would go to court and just BS his way through the first day of court and then study the case afterwards. I kind of follow him. He was the Attorney General of Maryland during the Constitution Convention. I'm sorry, after the Constitutional Convention. So I haven't looked up all the facts and figures yet. But I would say the main crisis right now that affects everyone is going to be property value. Number two is oil prices. And number three is probably all the other kind of debt that's being held, like student loans we hear about all the time, and credit card debt. I think those are in order of priority as the moment. I mean, as the government, inevitably, the federal government specifically, persists in spending more and more money, which, I mean, I know why they're doing it, borrowing money to spend, or who knows, QE and all that, quantitative easing. That will be down the road, but those things I mentioned are the things that are going to affect us personally first, across the board for all of us, in ways that I don't think we understand, things even I don't necessarily understand myself. So,
okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, because we are living in a global pandemic right now, and I think we need to speak a little bit more to that, the particular situation we find ourselves in this moment. How long do you expect U.S. citizens to be under stay-at-home orders, and how long do you think non-essential businesses will be closed due to COVID-19?
So interestingly enough, the things I heard that, or I read rather, that the peak was supposed to be this week and next week and maybe the week following, as far as, because we're in Maryland right now. Yeah, go Maryland, my Maryland. But I heard today a friend of mine talking about, because we all read different news. We're all reading different news. I read different news than what other people are reading. You read different news. My other friends, we all read different news. We get news from different sources, so we get different information. That's why we're speaking to each other. She was talking about thinking it was supposed to go through the summer. And then I heard today at work, because yes, I found a job. My mom helped me find a place where I can work right now, and things are going pretty well. She made a comment how she read somewhere that someone said, because this is very vague, first video, so we can get into more specifics later once we do this more regularly, that they were thinking of preparing early learning for September. So my initial estimate of worst case scenario going through the summer seems that it's possible that it could go beyond that, which is something that is unfathomable to me. I don't even know how society is going to handle that. I was thinking by the beginning of the summer, maybe we'd be done, but I heard from two different people today. So yeah, that's my best guess.
Yeah, I was actually watching a little bit of news earlier today, and I also have been, over the past 2 days, it seems like the stock market's been bouncing back a little bit. I mean, I'm sure it'll go down again, but
oh yeah, there's no doubt. I already watched the video on it was either Bloomberg or Yahoo Finance News. They call it the dead cat bounce. Oh yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. There's not. That's not a question. There's just question.
Yeah, but I guess my question is like, because I've heard on the news, and it could just be bullshit, but I mean, I heard that they originally had estimated there's going to be possibly up to like 1 million deaths in the United States because of this, and now they're saying like, oh, it's going to be more like 100,000. I mean, I'm not really sure what to believe in all this as far as those estimates are concerned, but I mean, do you think potentially the time frame could be getting like, oh, it's all going to be done a little sooner than we expect? Or
I think I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually leaning optimistically towards sooner rather than later. Because they were talking about, and again, I don't follow the virus stuff all that carefully because I'm more concerned with the economic ramifications. Is it 400,000 cases today? Or was it 300,000? I think we had 400,000 cases and like 12,000, 15,000 deaths. I'm thinking we're not really going to know till we had to pull up all the graphs and all that. I'm thinking we wouldn't really know till the end of the week. I don't think that there's going to be more than maybe 1.5 million persons infected. That's my guess.
in the U.S., you mean?
In the United States. That's my guess, because I think they talked about I just saw briefly doctors are getting a little more hopeful, and everyone's being quarantined pretty effectively ish, enough to slow it down and the spread. And China took what 7 weeks till they hit the peak. So those are just guesses, complete hypotheses. I'm not a a virus expert, so that's just my intuition.
Okay, I mean, my original thought was, Jesus, could go on the rest of the year. And so, as long as that doesn't happen, it's going to be better than I expected initially.
Well, the thing they talk about is like the second wave.
Yeah.
And I'm by nature a history person, and for the influenza, we're going to avoid calling it the Spanish flu. The influenza outbreak of 1918, that went through 3 waves. Again, I'm not an expert on this type of disease stuff. I can only pick pieces up here and there and kind of guess what I think. I think by the end of the summer at the latest. I really do.
Okay.
I really do.
Moving on to my next question for you, and I think we discussed this a little bit before off the air, but I think it's very important for our viewers to understand, with your outlook on the world right now, what are you investing in, if anything? How are you allocating your assets and your resources?
So I split things into different sections, and then I split those into subsections. So I have one section is tools, and then one section is I guess you would call them savings type. I don't know what kind of word you would use.
Like a savings account, like an online savings account?
No, I don't mean savings account in the idea of cash. I mean in a bank account. I mean like holding on to stuff that would hold value. So because I actually value the tools more than I value the savings stuff. I'll go into that first. Like for instance, what I did today. So I'm looking for my lighter, or here it is, or my matches. Like what I did today, I bought a Spanish dictionary. I bought a Hebrew, Greek, Christian Bible a few months ago. I bought food. I purchased body armor. Those are the types of things. Like even today, I'll tell you, there's a guy who came by. He says, we say hablo. He said hablo inglés poquito. So I was able to communicate fairly effectively with him in Spanish. Just literally half an hour ago, he came by because my landlady she's been cleaning up the house, and she put a bunch of trash. Like there were some chairs out front. So I was able to communicate with him because I've been studying Spanish. So it's that type of academic studying type of thing. Because I tell people like, and I was listening to Coach Greg Adams, because he talked about like developing a skill set. Like this is the time for us to study and learn. And that's one of the big things that I hold on to very strongly, is having the da'at, it's a good Hebrew word, the knowledge, or in Latin, the scientia, or in Greek, the gnosis. So
You're a big proponent of investing in yourself first and foremost.
In an intellectual way, absolutely.
So like investing your time into building up skills and knowledge.
Exactly. I like to say I know a little bit about enough things. And even the guy said to me, he said bastante. He's like, what do you say? Sabes bastante. He says, you know enough. I said, bastante. Absolutely. I know enough. Bastante is enough. I know enough Espanol to function with habladores españoles, the Spanish speakers. So that to me, and then just, networking in with relationships, using money to do that as well, depending on, where you want to, if you have the money to go out to eat or purchase certain items, to use that as opportunities to develop, what do they call it? For you to be a clientele at an establishment. So I call that's the tools section of my investment with my time and my money. And then the other half of that has to do, we're talking about the idea of saving. So tentatively, and again, I'm not, I know a lot of vague kind of broad ideas. So they'll be nuanced later in the future. But for savings, my tentative idea is that I'm going to keep a third in cash in paper, a third in my checking account, and a third if it opens up and I can find it, silver. I'm gonna try and actually purchase silver by the ounce.
So essentially, you're talking a third in cash on hand, or like, stored in your room or whatever. A
Exactly.
third in, I guess you would say, bank credit, like your money that's in your checking account, and a third in precious metals. It sounds like, specifically silver.
Now I'm only choosing silver because I had the guy who lives behind me, good friend of mine, really good friend of mine. I talked to one of his friends, and he dropped the comment of silver to me. And so again, I say it again, and I'm going off intuition, not because I'm an expert in precious metals or in silver, because a friend of a friend made a comment about it. I guess I'll run with it until I get more information. Yeah.
So that's kind of like how your cash and other like monetary assets are divided up. But would you?
Monetary assets. Yeah, that's a good term.
Would you be having significantly more of your resources in actual, like, food or tools as opposed to those monetary assets? Or
well, I already got 6 months of food stored up, so that's in my tool section, but that might turn into currency. I don't mean like immediately, but I mean down the road. But in a lot of ways, I'm gonna tell you, and because I hang out at bus stops and that type of thing. When you like with the cigarettes, I bought a bunch of cigarettes. I mean, that is, to me, that's smoking cigarettes is a networking tool. It is an investment. It can be actually like a form of currency. And I just like smoking. So, but food, same thing. Like when you're in certain places where there's more poverty. I mean, people, you get seen with, I don't know, that even that McDonald's bag, that Wendy's bag. I mean, you're communicating, especially right now, you are communicating about something about yourself when you light up a cigarette in public, or you have a certain kind of fast food with you in public, that you have. At least for the time being, you have money, and then that can be a way of currency for networking with other people. Something to consider. Yeah, it's going down the food route, but I do have enough stored for several months.
And tell our audience specifically, because you mentioned that you have X amount of months. I thought you said 6 months worth of food. What kind of food are we talking? Like canned goods or?
No. So I've spent a decade of my life cultivating simple tastes, and I have flour and I have rice, because I know a lot of people are gonna want their sugar, and they're gonna want their meat or bird or whatever. But if I can add water to it and make a fire, I know that I can survive off that, and that's all I'm going to need. Because down the road, I'm telling you, and I tell people this, I mean, don't be surprised when we start running out of stuff. Certain items even at the grocery store, because of again, I'm no expert, okay? I'm studying this as we speak. But don't be surprised if certain things, especially the meat and the seafood, start to vanish, because I don't know where this stuff comes from. Some of them kind of sort of know, but just don't be surprised, or if those prices for the certain of those things go up, like just do not be surprised. Absolutely. So yeah, it's simple food, but it's carbohydrates, but it's not going to go bad.
So then what's the advice for people that maybe are in a bit more fortunate of a situation than us and actually like own their own property and things like that? Should they start gardening and like growing their own fruits and vegetables? Or?
Well, before we get that, we got to go with the premise of owning property.
Okay.
Because I don't know, there's two types of people out there. There's people that own property, and then there's people who think they own property. You know what? You follow my drift?
Why don't you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah. Because, and I tell people, I say, you know, if you have a mortgage, you don't own your property. The bank owns your property. That's the reality. That's the bitter, bitter, bitter reality. And as an aside, and I tell people, and I'm telling you guys, this will happen. I'm not saying it happen tomorrow. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen in 3 months, but people's mortgages are going to, or rather, let me start. People's property values are going to fall below the balances on their mortgages. That is 100% guaranteed, unless you've got, like, I don't know, 5 years left. But I mean, generally speaking, that's the reality. That's what's going to happen. There's no getting around that.
So you're predicting another housing crash then?
There's no question. I mean, you can, and I don't need to do any of the heavy lifting, but I can. I mean, anyone can just type in housing crisis or housing crash or property values or whatever. Anywhere, YouTube, Google, Bing, Ask Jeeves, whatever, DuckDuckGo. I mean, what's Vimeo? Vimeo, I don't know how you have Vimeo. I mean, anything. Yeah, there's no question in my mind. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll dig deeper into that on another video.
But we can get back to your original question, your original point.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would encourage, and this is kind of like a pseudo spiritual religious thing for me, especially since I'm working in food now. It's very interesting. If you have access to land, oh yeah, farming. I'm not even saying gardening. I mean farming, like actual farming. Vegetables are all well and good. What I wanted to do, and I forgot, I need to order this, and I got to find a place to plant it. I'll probably do it at my parents' house. Wheat, not weed, but weed probably isn't too bad to hang on to either. But wheat. By the way, and investing in marijuana. Yeah, that's not a bad choice either. I would not, and I don't smoke anymore. But I'm gonna tell you what, if I find, there's no doubt in my mind, if I find people who have marijuana, I will buy it if the price is correct. I absolutely will. I won't smoke it, but I will hold on to it, because that is just as good as silver or cash, if you know the right people. But that's what I would focus on, is definitely gardening, also, but gardening and actually like farming. If you have property and the ability to do it, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to end off on one last question, and this could go on some other kind of tangent, but So Phil, overall, what is your outlook for the United States over the next decade? What do you believe will happen to our way of life as we know it?
Oh boy. Well, I was thinking about this today because I saw this question coming, and this is where we get into politics. I'm going to quote our great founding father, the first president of the United States, as to his reason for why we held the Constitutional Convention of 1787 in Philadelphia from, I think it was June to, it ended on September, where Luther Martin was, by the way, but he left in a huff. I think it was September 17th. It was the 16th or 17th. I can't remember, where they finally, finished the document. But what George Washington said, the reason why we had this convention was no money. I believe the United States, under the Articles of Confederation from the Revolutionary War, had a debt of $76 million. And we're talking about debt, the debt crisis, of the impending debt crisis of the United States. So that's why the Articles of Confederation were, dare I say, overthrown in 17. Would have been December 1788 was when the ninth state signed on to the Constitution, and it became ratified. I think it was December 1788. But that's why we had that. It was kind of a coup in a way, in my opinion, and we had that because of the debt crisis. And there's a whole bunch of, we talk about Shays Rebellion or the Whiskey Rebellion and stuff going on with debt crises from the late 18th century in the United States. But yeah, my biggest advice, and I will say advice to anybody, and I've been doing this, and I tell people all the time, I've been doing this for 9 years, actually even before 9 years, but really 9 years ago, is learning to live much more simply. Because our way of life in the United States is definitely under attack. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily believe that to be a bad thing. I think from my studies of history, I think it's inevitable because the system is set up. I mean, in my opinion, the whole banking, finance, stock market, Federal Reserve, it's all set up to fail. Down eventually, it's all 100% set up to fail, and it will fail. And the political upheaval that will come from that, I as yet cannot predict. But I tell people, I said, yeah, this is going to be a decade, at least. Governments, I don't know which ones, but governments will fall across the world because of what's started right now. There's no question in my mind, none whatsoever. The question I have is just when. That's the question. I mean, they were talking about in Iraq. I mean, Iraq is having. I saw that in a magazine, oilprices.com. They're talking about that in Iraq, political problems because they're so dependent upon oil for their government spending. So, yes, stuff like just don't be surprised. No.
So I'm gonna name drop another YouTube channel that we both watch.
Yeah.
Because I think it's relevant to the point you just made. You know Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk. Right?
Kyle Kalinske. I was reading about him on Rational Wiki today just to see what they thought about him. Yeah.
So I remember seeing a video by him somewhat recently, and I think it was kind of like criticizing what some Fox commentator said about what's happened with the stimulus package.
Yeah.
And he was basically of the mindset of like, okay, well, we're not the same as Venezuela because Venezuela is like all dependent on oil, and that's why it's cyclical and they crash all the time. Basically making the point that like because the United States is diversified in its assets, if you will, that we're not as prone to like, having a big blow up due to our debt. How do you respond to that?
That's only half true. We're not as prone to bigger blow-ups because this is a big blow-up. I have to find the statistics on this, but there are 3 things that the U.S. exports, I guess more than any other country in the world, but again, I don't know the statistics. And these are kind of funny to me. Food, media, meaning television, movies, music, and weapons. So we definitely do have a more diversified economy due to the nature of I mean, this is where geography comes in. I mean, plain and simple. Geography comes in here, plain and simple, 100%. We have vast agricultural resources, and that is definitely going to undoubtedly, indubitably benefit those who are in the United States right now. Even in Maryland, I mean, we have a lot of agricultural stuff. Even in Montgomery County, where I live, it's out in the West, but we have it. And it's interesting that Mr. Kalinske would make that comment, because that shows that his mindset is going towards the way my mind is going as well. This is going to be an irreconcilable and irredeemable crisis of unprecedented proportions.
Well, no. I think the thing is, like, because I watch that channel, and that's actually where I get like a good chunk of my news from these days.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I always never like fully agree with him on it. I don't really like necessarily his economic takes, because I feel like he just like acts as if like you can run a debt as high as you want and there's going to be no consequences. Like that's the impression I get from that channel.
Yes, that's what I've had, because we talk about, and I try to be bipartisan in that both political parties irritate me. That's right. I have a problem with the tax and spend folks, but the borrow and spend folks, oh boy. that's even worse, because and this will happen. It was unclear to me if there's going to be inflation or deflation at this point. Right now, we are definitely going through a deflationary period for consumer products. Okay. what is inflating right now is the cost at which to borrow. So it's going to cost more to borrow, but it's going to cost less to buy things. And that's relevant because the only out that, and I don't know again how this all works between the Federal Reserve, which is from 1913, by the way. 1913 was the year the Federal Reserve Bank was established, and the Department of the Treasury, which, by the way, because I add this in, at the founding of the United States, as according to the Constitution, there were only 4 cabinet offices. I think right now we have like 22 to 26. I can't remember. And the Department of the Treasury, also, they called it the Department of War at the time, but now it's the Department of Defense. Those were 2 of the 4, I believe, people can correct me if I'm wrong, original cabinet positions. But at any rate, the point is, I don't know what the Treasury and the Reserve do together, but it is undoubtable to me that we will enter hyperinflation. That will definitely happen. I just don't know. I just don't know when it's going to be. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. And I should say not hyper. In that case, inflation, not necessarily hyperinflation. Because the one thing that's been going on lately, I read a comment on a video, is that we've actually been fighting, believe it or not, ever since the housing crisis 10 years ago. And I'm not sure if before that, we've actually been fighting deflation, believe it or not, because inflation has been only, I think, 2%. And again, I don't know all the specifics of how this works, but it's only been 2% in the past 10 years. And that's been with all this liquidity in easy money and low interest rates and quantitative easing that's been going on. Even with that, it's been very, very low inflation in the United States. So I mean, that's definitely the future I see. Again, when it will happen, I know not, but it will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, we're just about out of time here, so I want to thank our audience for taking the time to watch, and it's been a real blessing having you on the channel with your
blessing. Oh my, a
bracha. We look forward to
Thanks.
having you on for additional videos.
Yeah, and I just want to add in real quick. I will be checking. I don't know how many people have been watching your videos so far, comments. I will be checking the comments and communicating with anybody in there.
Yes, I was about to say to our audience, feel free to like and subscribe, and also the comments. That's our favorite part. We like to interact with our viewers.
Yep, I will make my presence felt, so we can have dialogue if necessary, or we can call each other names. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm a keyboard warrior a little bit myself.
All right, well, stay safe, brother, and we'll
happy Passover.
Happy Passover, indeed.
Pesach Sameach.